Yeah, future and a hope. Okay.
Future and a hope. Yes. So it's now streaming on YouTube. Awesome. If I can get the screen share, that would be great. A future and a hope. So at the moment, I can't do screen share because it's disabled, and I need to wait for Dr. Jill.
You are able to do it. You're able to do it.
Okay.
We're good.
We're good now? Awesome. So I just pulled up the agenda for tonight.
Have the agenda. You don't need to show it. No, we're good. Yeah, we just need to
Okay.
get started. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, I want to first just say a huge apology and thank you for your patience with us. So it seems like everything I'm saying is being repeated, but I'll try to my best to follow on this. So we will be introducing our team first off, and so I want to. I think we should cancel and have a different meeting another night. I can't understand how it's.
So I can hear you. Can everyone else hear?
Yes.
Yeah, Jill sounds.
Yes.
I can
Yeah,
hear
and
you.
it's not being, the audio's perfect.
Yeah.
I think Jill is saying she's getting feedback.
Go ahead and pull up the agenda again. Let's see.
Speak, everything's repeated, so I'll try again and see if it works better this time.
She's muted.
Okay.
Esther, sorry, we have problems here. We have technical problem.
Can you guys hear us clearly or
Yeah,
no?
right now it's good. Just
Yeah.
because we had two connections in the same place, that was the problem.
Okay, so I pulled up the agenda. Are we waiting for Jill or are we rerouting?
That's good. Yeah. So, Esther, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now it's good. Now it's good.
Okay, so if you could close this down, thank you. Thanks. So we'll try this again, Lord willing. And it's pretty crazy the way this is all coming together. Hi, Mario. Hi, James. Hi, Cindy. Thanks for joining us. So I am really the worst when it comes to technology. So I'm feeling incredibly grateful right now for Wendy sitting here next to me. So if you could show your face. Wendy is our intern from Fuller Seminary. She's really savvy with technology. I should have met with her an hour ago to make sure I understood all these details that I didn't really realize I would need to know. And so, and next to me, at least on the screen, is Esther, and she is also working with our organization, and we're very grateful for her helping us with this survey and the efforts we're doing to try to make North Fair Oaks safer and more beautiful. Our theme is to beautify and not gentrify. And so we're going to share with you a little PowerPoint after we finish our introductions. Dr. Walton is also part of our team, along with 7 or 8 other churches that participate with us. And Dr. Walton is part of the New Hope Church that's on North Fair Oaks. He's an elder there and a retired physician. And he brings a lot of good jokes and fun to our team. And we need to really especially hold him in a tender way right now, considering that his sister just passed away last Sunday. And so let's just make sure that we are aware that any one of us could be facing tragedies. So we just feel grateful that despite what Dr. Walton is going through, he's with us. That says an amazing thing about him. And so once we've kind of introduced the team here, I think we should just take a minute and allow others to quickly introduce themselves. Lola, why don't you start, and then we'll just go around brief introductions.
Hello, I'm Lola Osborne. I'm the Deputy Director for the Parks, Recreation, Community Services Department with the city. I'm also the Northwest Manager, and I support the Northwest Commission, which has worked with this team a lot on your efforts. Nice to see everyone this evening.
Thanks, Lola. Johnson?
Thank you, Jill. My name is Donson Liu. I am an associate engineer with the Department of Transportation, and I worked on the North Fair Oaks Avenue traffic study. Thank you.
Thank you, Donson. Thank you, James.
Good evening, everyone. This is James Tong. I am representing Public Works Department, and great to see everyone here.
Thank you, James. Appreciate you joining us. Cindy? You're unmuted. You need to unmute.
That was a surprise to be called on, Jill. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Happy to see you. My name is Cindy Clark Schnelly. I am with the Northwest Commission, but I'm here just as a private citizen this evening, an interested resident of Northwest Pasadena, and I live in Orange Heights.
Well, we really appreciate you, Cindy, and your support of what we're doing. We really appreciate it. Mario.
Good evening, everybody. I am just a regular citizen visiting, interested in housing and the things that Jill is doing and has been doing for so long. Thank you for the opportunity to be here among you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mario. We really appreciate you. So tonight we're going to be just doing a very quick PowerPoint to give you a little bit of a history and context of what we're doing. Then Lou Donson will be sharing briefly with us some aspects of North Fair Oaks, some of the accidents and traffic studies and results, and why we need complete streets and what that is. And then Esther will share with us just some of the preliminary results that we've gotten so far on the survey that was sent last week or 2 weeks ago. Then we'll have some open discussion and end with a few announcements and questions for you all. So let's start in. If we need to do a share of the PowerPoint. Let me do that. Slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Can you all see that? I hope.
Yes.
Yes, we
Great.
can.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're with an organization. I'm the co-founding director of Making Housing Community Happen. It was started actually on Fair Oaks years ago out of the American Friends Service Committee, their office. And so 25 years later, here we are as a nonprofit. And we have quite a history and success. We've been working on the North Fair Oaks area for about 10 years. And we're really to equip congregations, community leaders, and neighbors with practical tools needed to transform their communities, end homelessness, and stabilize the cost of housing through education, advocacy, organizing, and advisement. We have 7 teams to help make that happen. We've taken some teams and put them to bed because we've accomplished our goals. The ASHA team essentially does their primary advocacy work. And so just in the last 2 years, we've seen 250 units of affordable and permanent supportive housing approved. And that's what permanent supportive housing is, what ends chronic homelessness. So it's very exciting for us. We've actually over the years seen a 56% drop of homeless in the homeless count in the city of Pasadena. And that's through a lot of collaborative efforts. Our ADU committee, we've just decided to end, but it's been going off and on since 2003. We even went to work with state policy to bring about change at that level. We now can build ADUs anywhere in the state of California, no matter your property size. Safe parking, that committee is in partnership with Foothill Unity. We have a pilot program, and that pilot program, we have 4 people in the program. 1 person has already graduated, is now permanently housed. So that's exciting. Our goal is to spread throughout all of San Gabriel Valley. Our community land trust team is shaping a nonprofit that would hold land in common, where you would own the land, pardon me, not the land, you would own your home, but not the land. And that's what makes it affordable. And there's a resale formula that everyone agrees to that would make it affordable for the next purchaser. So it's a form of permanent affordability. Congregational land team, we have a powerful team that now has 50 churches we're working with throughout all of Southern California. And we're working with a handful of cities to do what's called an overlay zone to get the zoning right for every church in that city interested in having affordable housing on their underutilized or excess land. And so tonight we're focusing on the North Fair Oaks Empowerment Team. And so you can see some of this here, and Dr. Walton will be taking it from here for the next couple of slides.
Okay, so as you can see, this is some of our team members. I have been with the North Fair Oaks Empowerment Initiative since I retired. So that's been a little over a year and a half. My church is at 1787 North Fair Oaks. So it put me pretty squarely in the center of this community. And that's really was part of the driving force for my personal interest in improving that neighborhood. It was just very obvious to me that there had been a divestment in that neighborhood compared to other communities in Pasadena. Next. So our mission is to beautify and not gentrify this community. As I mentioned, I am a transplant from Alabama, so I was not aware of North Fair Oaks when it was a very thriving community, as I have been told. from the time that I've seen it, as I mentioned, it had been divested, looked pretty run down, and it was always a kind of blighted area. And it would be disappointing for me when I would go to attend my church and have to drive and be in that part of the community compared to my experience in the rest of the city. I live near PCC, and I have friends who live in Bungalow Heaven, and it was just a very different experience from North Fair Oaks. So what we would like to do in this area is create a real sense of community. I saw that a few years ago, the potential that was here when we had a fair back in about 2015. And when I saw the diversity of people there and the interest that was in that community, it's obvious to me that it can be very vibrant if, in fact, we can kind of draw every people out of their own little shells and create this sense where we can have a safe and vibrant community. Next. Next, please.
I'm trying. Thanks.
Okay. So what we have been trying to do with respect to our goals is to actively engage the churches, business owners, and the community to express what they want to see. We're not trying to direct this from the top down, but we would like for this to be the proverbial bottom up. We want the community to give input as to what they would like to see. And we would like to encourage them to believe that the vision that they have for their community can in fact be achieved. I know that it can be very difficult and discouraging after years of neglect of investment in that community, that a lot of the residents can think that no one is interested in them and nothing can happen. But we want to revive a sense of hope as to what that community can be. And so we have been partnering with the Congregation Land Committee to support churches. One of the things that we see, there's a number of churches along North Fair Oaks and in that community. And most of those churches have property that sits vacant throughout much of the week. And that was one of the things that I had just sort of independently noticed. And it would be a great asset to both the churches and to that community if we could in fact build affordable housing. And that's what we've been trying to support, is those churches who want to do that. And Jill mentioned the overlay zone, which would allow for the proper zoning for that to happen. But this is what we would like to see in that particular area. Next. Next slide, there we go. And so our strategy has grown quite a bit. The first thing that we really wanted to do was to listen. And we did a number of surveys, 150 back in 2015. And as I mentioned, we also had a job fest, and that's what drew so many people, over 500 or so in attendance. And the second part of this was to partner with Complete Streets Coalition, Boys and Girls Club, and we came out with a list of 15 different things that we wanted to see happen. And this was part of the common goals. Now, what we have done is that we have created a team, a quote unquote dream team, to address those concerns and see how it is that we can make them happen. And what we're currently doing, what the process that we're in now, is that we have actually increased that survey. So from 150 households, that has been increased to 1,000 households. And what we're asking is for the community support for Complete Streets, as well as inviting the community to address what its current interests are, understanding that some of the things that we learned in 2015 may be somewhat dated. We would like to know what the community wants now with respect to improving its streets and the living experience in North Fair Oaks. Next. So who are our partners? We partnered with the city of Pasadena, and we have been very happy really with the support that we have received from the city, that we have received from the Northwest Commission. We've been in conversation with representatives of the Department of Transportation, and they have been very supportive, and we appreciate the support that we have received to date from the city. We've also partnered with the Complete Streets Coalition, and this represents a group of volunteers who are dedicated to developing projects and policies in Pasadena that will bring about safer streets, streets that will be more inviting for people to walk on, streets that are cleaner, that are healthier. We want streets that also have greenery, that are beautiful to look at. That's part of the community experience. It's not just housing, but we want to have an environment that will foster the kind of community that will bring us together. Next. And this is a slide that goes back and talks about our history, one that predates me, but apparently the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance was very important in sort of promoting and prompting this whole interest in revitalizing the North Fair Oaks area district.
Yeah, let me just add briefly to that. We're really indebted to the IMA since 1936. They've been addressing issues within the communities, and so I just feel honored to have been part of this team for over 20 years. And one year they felt that I could be the one to help coordinate what they called a resource fair. And so we decided that year to do it with and by the people. And so we had what we called the Northwest Job Fest. And so that's why we did the 150 surveys, just to get to know who are the people in the community that care, that want to come out and help make a difference. And all these folks that you see on this banner that we had on the stage, these are all the businesses and people that participated in contributing to make that fair a reality. And we asked questions like, what is your dream job? We had all kinds of booths. All kinds of booths where like this, you can see the big truck here, and that's the workforce. What do you call it? Where you can go in and they help you write your resume, and then you submit it, and you come out the other end and you get a free dress shirt and haircuts and just all different things going on, all kinds of activities with every business and people participating. Lola played a big role also in helping us getting the permits and getting everything set for this, as did Tyrone Hampton, who is our city council rep. He's the one, you can see he looks so dapper. Well, he was the one that manned the booth for the free dress shirts. You can see why. And a lot of great folks participated. So I think Dr. Walton, you were just going to share briefly about this, and then we'll switch gears and start getting input from Johnson briefly. Thank you, Dr. Walton.
So this is the next slide with the 15 asks that I had mentioned, spoken about earlier. Some of these have been completed, but amongst those things that we wanted were wider sidewalks, the possibility of having some cutouts and parklets. We had wanted bike racks, and in addition to shade trees, as I mentioned, some greenery on the streets and the like. One of the things that has happened most significantly is that in front of my church, there was a traffic light that was placed, which has been a great benefit to the church and actually to the residents who live across the street. We now have a traffic light that controls the traffic, which at sometimes on North Fair Oaks can be quite fast and quite dangerous. And it was difficult for us to have ingress and egress just out of our church. And so this has made that a lot simpler. Cleaner streets. We obviously would like to see at some point in time an improvement in the businesses along the streets with respect to the storefronts. Hopefully they can be revitalized with painting, some perhaps art or other things that might happen in the community that will beautify it. And this is sort of self-explanatory. One of the things that has concerned us is safety on the street. And one of our projects is to decrease the lanes from 4 down to 2. Right now, there are 2 lanes in each direction, north and south. And what we have proposed is a single lane, north and south, with a center turn lane. And as you can see, the number of people who can be severely injured in a vehicle pedestrian kind of confrontation really increases with the speed. That is pretty much self-explanatory. And as we know, I'm certain, this has been a place where there have been accidents and near accidents. And so we would like to make that a much safer thing. And I think by changing the number of streets will make it simpler to cross, increase pedestrian safety in crossing the streets.
I want to just add one quick story here. Charles Hardy, the husband of my good friend, who passed away a few years ago, but he still lives in Summit Townhomes right there on North Fair Oaks. And just within the last year, he was trying to pull out onto North Fair Oaks, and his car was totaled. Thank God he's okay, but it was very scary for him. So we know of someone else who closer to Fair Oaks in Washington was crossing the street. She was not careful in how she was doing it, but she was hit and actually killed. So this is really a matter of racial justice, what we're doing. Dr. Walton earlier mentioned how just how other parts of the city have so much of what we don't have and want. And it's not by accident. These things happened over time. And starting with things like racial restrictive covenants, where 65% of Pasadena all had covenants on their home saying that a person of color would never purchase and own their home. That was undone in 1968. The 1949 Federal Housing Act essentially had slum clearance through something called urban renewal, but many called that Negro removal. Thousands of folks were actually displaced because of that, and many on North Fair Oaks. Redlining, banks would not loan and provide loans for African Americans oftentimes, and so they started their own bank on the corner of Lake and Washington, and so property values would plummet. And then we saw the freeway come through in the early 70s, and that displaced, again, thousands of folks in that path. This has happened all over the country with freeways often in the path of thriving business, African-American business districts. So the school desegregation, Pasadena was the only city outside of west of the Mississippi that was required to desegregate because of Lake Mirror was mostly all Black with white students and busloads going toward La Cañada that used to be part of Pasadena Unified School District. So gentrification today is in full swing. Northwest is the area where one of the last parts of the city that some can still afford. The average home price now is about $1 million. It is in Pasadena, a little less than that in Northwest. So we have people being displaced like crazy or selling out and moving to other areas. And so our demographic has shifted dramatically. We used to have close to a third of the city African-American. Now it's around 8%. And so these churches on North Fair Oaks are all struggling with members and trying to keep afloat. So it's very exciting to think that they are interested in trying to get the right zoning so they can supply housing that folks can afford. So this is the dream, to try to revive what once was. And we're very, very faith rooted in our approach. And so we're we're excited about being able to imagine what doesn't exist, and by faith step out and begin to dream of a community that we all want and we know is good for everyone. So Dr. Walter, why don't you finish the segment and share with us about this image, and then we'll have Donson share with us briefly.
Well, you see what we are proposing for changes on North Fair Oaks. On the left-hand side is the street as it currently exists. And what you see is our render for what we would like to see on the street. And when you look on the left, you see that there are the 2 lanes going on your right side, going south, 2 lanes coming north. And you can see some of the businesses along the right side of the street. And the sort of restricted parking with the red lining of the curve there. Here you're looking at on the render, and what we would like to do, as previously stated, was decrease those 2 lanes to 1 going in each direction with a center turn lane. And you can see along the curb now, there has been some greenery, some plants that will beautify that area. It may be a little difficult to see, but you can see that there are benches that would be out near the Rio Meat Market. That would be a place where people could sit if they wanted. You look at trees down the street, and this is sort of a proposal. You're looking at a structure on the right that you don't see in the before, and that is for New Life Holiness Church, which has pretty much developed a plan to build 52 units or so of affordable housing. But this, of course, is depending on what the city will do with zoning. And so you can just get an idea of how much just better looking and how much more inviting the picture is on the right compared to what we see on the left, which is currently what exists here now.
So I want to thank you, Dr. Walton, and everyone who helped along the path of this, not just putting the presentation together, but I know Lola and others played significant roles in some of this. So Donson, why don't you take 5 minutes and share with us? And after 5 minutes, we'll let you know
Sure.
when that's up. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shook. Esther, do you happen to have the presentation loaded up? If not, I can share my screen.
Yeah, you can. It's open for you to share.
Okay.
So go right ahead. Yeah.
All right. How's that? Can you see the PDF? That's
Yes.
okay, great. All right. Let me just resize it. Okay. And it's size-wise, it's fine, like the aspect. Okay. Just to give a little background on what we
Actually, can you make it a little bigger? It's really tiny.
Oh, how's that?
There, that's much better.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'm just going to give a kind of a short presentation on what a complete street is and what we looked at for North Fair Oaks and what we found to be feasible. Excuse a typo that says North Fair Oaks Boulevard. I copied the wrong file earlier today. As Dr. Walton explained in his presentation right before this, this complete street is exactly what he was describing. So this is kind of what a general idea of a complete street is. It's just more people oriented as opposed to car traffic oriented. Here are some general principles of what a complete street is. I think this is consistent with what the previous presentation has presented as what we all want for North Fair Oaks. Here are some more descriptions of exactly the type of users that we're trying to accommodate and to better facilitate in these neighborhoods. Complete streets are much more useful for neighborhoods with seniors, with people with disabilities. It allows them to walk around their neighborhood, have slightly more space for loading if necessary, things like that. Here's the same slide that was just presented, and this is worth reiterating the fact that part of what makes these streets safer is the slowing down of traffic. We know that just based on physics that, and unfortunately, some of the events that happen all around our state and country, that pedestrians have a much higher chance of survival in lower speed collisions. So when pedestrians get hit on streets that are faster, like North Fair Oaks or Orange Grove Boulevard or Washington, just some of our bigger streets in the city, depending on the speed, that could really affect the outcome of the incident. Here is some hard data from a traffic study that we helped develop a few years back. So that's why you'll see here, it only looks from 2008 to 2017. And this is just some rough, well, not rough, but these are raw collision numbers per year for North Fair Oaks between Washington and Montana. I updated this, well, I couldn't update the chart this morning, but the numbers from 2018 and 2019 were relatively consistent, which is unfortunate in that 2018 we had 14 collisions and 2019 we had 11. We generally don't look at 2020 due to the pandemic and how different everybody's lives became.
People have really been speeding during the pandemic.
Yes, definitely. So while there may have been fewer cars, the reduction in crashes was not as much as we would hope when it came down to fewer people driving, hopefully fewer crashes and things like that. This is a collision by travel mode for North Fair Oaks. You can see here that 79% of crashes involve only vehicles, but the fact that 16% involve pedestrians and another 5% involve bicycles. So that's a full 21% that involve bicycles and pedestrians. North Fair Oaks tells us that if almost 1/4 of crashes involve non-vehicles or non-cars, non-automobiles, that these modes are not they're not well protected on the street, or at least they could be better protected. Here are some more diagrams on what exactly a complete street on North Fair Oaks would look like to kind of further elaborate on what Dr. Walton presented about the center turn lane. You'll see here on the left kind of what an existing section of North Fair Oaks looks like. There's 2 lanes. Making a left involves stopping in a travel lane. This does increase the risk of rear ends, and especially for drivers that may not be paying attention. On the right, you'll see a left turn with a center turn lane. This is another diagram that just shows what exactly it could look like from a cross-section point of view. If you're interested in the widths of the street that would be left. Here is a concept that was developed based on the traffic study that we did with a traffic engineering firm to kind of see what exactly could fit on North Fair Oaks and what would be feasible. This is kind of hard to see, so I zoomed in on some sections here. As you can see here, here's what a center turn lane would look like at Fair Oaks Avenue and Howard Street. Here's where it would look like at the signalized crosswalk just north of Fair Oaks Drive. So this would be relatively consistent through the entire section of Fair Oaks that we looked at. So that's what we found to be feasible and possible for North Fair Oaks from a purely traffic point of view.
Johnson,
Yeah.
that was an excellent presentation. And we're going to have some time for questions in a minute, but we're going to look at the preliminary results of our survey. And I think, Esther, you're going to share that with us. Is that right? Yeah. you need to unmute, please. Thanks.
Sorry about that, everyone. So far, I'm going to go ahead and first break it down by question and then overall from the survey. So for question 1, so far we have 86% of responses have been positive. For question 2, we have
Can you tell us what the question was?
Yes, let me go ahead and pull that up. I should have had that prepared. I'm so sorry, guys. Make sure I have that on here.
I can probably find it real quick in a second.
Let's see. Okay, so I have this. So for question 1, can you guys all see the document clearly?
Yeah.
So these are the questions that we included in the final survey layout that we sent out to the community. It's just a basic Word document that I have next to me, but it serves the same purpose. It has the same question on the layout. So to go ahead and backtrack on what I previously mentioned, I'll go ahead and break it down by question and then overall the survey questions. So for question 1, which is, would you like for me to read it, Dr. Jill, for question 1?
No, I think everyone can read it. Just tell us the result.
So question 1, so far we have 86% of responses have been positive. For question 2, so far 92% of the responses have been positive. And for question 3, it's 65% of responses have been positive. Question 4, that was more of an open-ended question. It was more to provide feedback from the community. But overall, with all the questions together, overall 85% of all responses have been positive so far.
Thank you so much, Esther. Really appreciate that. So this is the time where we open it up for discussion. I think question 4 is a good place to, any questions you might have about the enhancement plans and what we're proposing. So feel free just to unmute and share any questions or thoughts or feelings you might have. Mario, do you think this is going to help with the children you're working with at the Boys and Girls Club?
Well, actually, it will help a lot of people. Jill, I am not working with the kids there. I am a pastor, actually interested in what you're doing.
Okay, I was thinking you were Mario up on North Oaks. I apologize.
Yes, that's fine. That's okay. But the efforts and the process in which you are engaged are really inspiring. I know there are a lot of churches becoming aware of their role in transforming this terrible situation of housing here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so that's why I came, and I am inspired to see what you're doing. So
we
yes,
appreciate we're inspired by you too. I've appreciated our connection in the past, and I hope we have more. And but definitely, Cindy, I know that you don't live in this community, but you certainly have a big heart for this community. What do you think of these plans?
Well, I am south a bit, but I am definitely a resident of Northwest Pasadena and North Fair Oaks, like several of our other corridors. I agree, are in need of a revitalization. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I think just a little love, a little paint, just some attention overall to let people know that the city actually sees us and they know we exist and our community is of importance to everyone. on the city council. So I'm curious about question 4 again, and just, I don't want it to be too vague and so it doesn't have enough meat to it. Could you read that one again, please?
The last question, do you want to
Yeah,
read
it's
that
on the
again?
survey.
Yes. So the last question, question 4, do you have any concerns about the proposed enhancement plans, or are there any other improvements, changes, or businesses you would like to see in your community?
Right. Did you get responses as to what sort of businesses your community or the community on North Fair Oaks would like to see?
There was one response that said they wanted a coffee shop. That's
Okay.
something I also want. And so,
Yeah.
but I want to have it with a purpose.
Right.
So Rosebud Coffee down on Colorado was started by a pastor, and
Right.
it's just a wonderful model where those experiencing homelessness have been involved with job training and are working there. And it's really served a great location for people to connect. It's much more than a coffee shop with activities in the evening.
Right. I'm
And
familiar
so,
with it. It's wonderful.
yeah.
But my question would be on the proposed enhancements. I mean, the enhancement seems pretty straightforward, and we've already heard from city staff and the Department of Transportation that it is actually feasible. So that's great. Were there any other proposed enhancements that your community or the community of North Fair Oaks mentioned to you or answered on the survey that was a bit of a surprise, or something that you want to?
So Esther,
Kind of a yes, no answer.
we outlined all the responses so far that we've received from question 4. Are there some highlights that you could share with us?
We have it on the Excel sheet.
Mhm.
Data.
Yeah.
I
And
was
so,
curious, but in any case, I'm very, very happy that after all of your hard work and your team's hard work, that the city has actually said that the plan is feasible. Then I guess my next question would be from someone who's on a commission is there funding? It's feasible, great. Do we have money to make it
that's a
happen?
great question. And the reason I mentioned the coffee shop, because I read all those responses, and that was the only one that actually asked about additional businesses they'd like to see. As far as other responses, they were primarily around, there was one person that got very detailed exactly where they want to see a little bit of improvement here or there on the crosswalk. There was just quite a bit of engagement. One person wrote an extra page they attached to the survey. Another person wrote another whole page. And I guess it's interesting because it kind of gave them a chance to almost rant a little bit. And I think it needs to be a place in the community for that. And I was grateful that they took the time and they cared that much to want to really write down in detail. But none of them were proposals of specific things other than, like what you said, less trash, more paint,
Yeah.
do something with empty properties,
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, I certainly
And the money, maybe that's
the money.
something that Johnson can respond to.
That'd be wonderful.
And yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Yes, there is no money for this concept. This is actually not a city project. This was purely a feasibility study to see if it would be possible. I do want to warn that whenever we do remove travel lanes, we do typically expect a good amount of concern from not just the adjacent residents, but also anyone who takes Fair Oaks or adjacent residents. And that's why we did this feasibility study to help answer some of those questions. But even then, we will have, I anticipate, concerns coming from emergency services, transit providers like both Metro and Pasadena Transit may be concerned about their travel times, things like that. So these are things to kind of be cognizant about later down the process when when the.
Absolutely. I think
I
those are
apologize. I have
very
a cat
legitimate concerns
around.
that we need to be aware of. And I think when in our conversation with Rich Deluvio, he said that this will be the basis for writing grants, that they'll be able to get grants and get the funding to do this once we have a high percentage of responses. And so far, so good. We have very few people that are opposing this project, if any. And I was going to say something else in response to what you said, and now I've kind of lost my train of thought. But as far as just the feasibility, we want so much more than just this. We want to see more crosswalks. You know, we want to see the housing built. We want to see little pocket parks. We know it takes money, but we believe that this really is a matter of racial justice, and this area deserves it. And that it's worth putting the time and energy into writing the grants and doing what it takes to make sure it happens.
I guess, Jill, my question would then be, even with the grant money, which is if you have somebody who can write a grant and get those funds, then I would then go back to the city and say, this is feasible, but he just mentioned several roadblocks that have nothing to do with the feasibility. It has to do with first responders. It has to do with people traveling from Altadena to the freeway and that sort of thing. So what would be the next steps, the next logical step in this process now that there's a feasibility study done?
So the next step, and I believe the team has done a great job of garnering support. So this outreach process that Lola has been really the backbone of helping us facilitate in terms of printing, mailing, things like that. More of that. I think, and once we can demonstrate to city council or council members that this is a project that the entire neighborhood would get behind, because the thing is, we cannot apply for a grant without overwhelming support, not just from residents, but also the businesses and all service providers, all stakeholders involved. The reason being is that we cannot, get money from whether it be state or the federal government and end up in a situation where the improvements are never agreed upon by the community, and they're kind of, it's not something that, a grant is really based on or would be awarded for. So I think the next step would be to further develop the support. Once we have all the responses that you guys are happy with, I think we can present it to, or you as a community group can present it to your council member, and then we can provide any evidence or support with regards to the feasibility study. And from there, it will develop into a larger city project, like a capital improvement project. A lot of our capital improvement projects start out unfunded, but that's the step that we want to get to is once a community can develop a project, develop it into even an unfunded project, we just want to get on the list. And once it's on the list, that's when we have all our paperwork, our ducks in a row to show that, yes, this is possible, this is feasible. We have done our outreach and due diligence, and it is supported by the entire community and all stakeholders. And that's when we can start pursuing grant funding.
Johnson, I would ask, because there's been a lot of work done already and there's some pretty high hopes, and then obviously this community has been waiting a very long time to get even baby steps completed. So instead of looking at the huge picture where everything is, is years down the line, if you get a grant and then if the players aren't in line, you lose that grant money. And I don't want to discourage anybody, but that's the truth of the matter. Let's concentrate then on the smaller successes that we can do instead of the large picture. What can be done, what can be funded on a smaller scale to let this particular community know that they're being seen and heard. I mean, I love your concept about the big concept, but let's just go a little micro here and take some smaller steps so that we can energize the community more if they see some even smaller things being done on their behalf.
I can't speak for Public Works or planning. I don't know what programs that they have, but we always have kind of internal money that we can use. So for example, whenever we see a need or demonstrate a need, such as the signalized crossing that was put in maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a year before COVID, that's something that we can do. Those are projects that we can turn around in, a year or 2 years maximum. Same thing with, high visibility crosswalks, things like that. We can always look at maybe adding crossings where they're appropriate, but having added that signalized one, that's probably, going to be the only one for a little bit on North Fair Oaks, but we can definitely do more to improve the existing infrastructure that's out there. So, high visibility crosswalks, things like that. Also, depending on when Public Works does their resurfacing projects, that's something that we frequently and often piggyback on to make these large scale improvements. So ideally, we may end up in a situation where if North Fair Oaks is resurfaced a few years later, we can put in striping improvements at basically no cost because the entire street's being redone. So for example, some of the improvements that we see on Orange Grove, that was a result of a resurfacing project. And that's when we, as DOT, piggybacked on and threw in all of our paint improvements, all of the high visibility crosswalks. That would be kind of the easiest avenue to get some of these improvements in without making it a big CIP project that's 5-10 years down the road.
Well, you're bringing up a CIP, and unfortunately I have to leave quickly, but then I would ask this group if they would please be a little more specific. And Johnson, if you would give this group or Jill a list of what is feasible in the short term versus the grant process, and just have two lanes working simultaneously, so to speak, a short term and a long term thought process, because the CIP process is going on now. And the Northwest Commission, for instance, which encompasses districts 1, 3, and 5, is submitting proposals to Public Works. You say that might be a longer time, but to get on the list, you also said, and that's the advantage of that, that CIP proposals have to be submitted by October. So if this group, and with your help, can fine tune and focus on projects that you can, as you say, piggyback onto, that can be,
So
we can see
Cindy,
results, then perfect.
what could we do to get this in now in October?
Work with Donson and get a list to the Northwest Commission to me, and I will make sure it's put into
Okay,
our
yeah.
submittal process to Public Works, and we'll meet with them and present it to the Northwest Commission in September for voting, and then to Public Works in October. So by the end of September, if you could get something to
Okay.
us, or even the second, end of September. That would
And
be
what do you need us to get to you?
I need to know from Donson if what he's saying is how he can, the Department of Transportation can piggyback with funding projects that can be funded either on a CIP, or he would know how to finesse this a little bit more than I could, because
That's a way to kind of bypass the CIP project to get these striping improvements in. That's kind of what I was more alluding to.
okay. So maybe
we don't really need to, that's not necessary at this point to make this an unfunded CIP. I think if we can really finalize the outreach, demonstrate support, not just from residents, but also from all the churches, all the businesses adjacent to it, that's when when this gets submitted as a CIP idea, would score really well and, has a much higher chance of
see what you're saying.
getting on a list.
Right,
So
so,
we'd like to count on you, Cindy, and the Northwest Commission to help us with some of the outreach. We're looking, because we want to be aware of the time right now, we're looking to consider a meeting, a second public meeting like this, a community meeting on the 20th of October. And so I want to get your feedback from everyone. So we obviously are learning a lot just from seeing the attendance in this meeting that we need to do a lot more work. We kind of made assumptions by putting out 1,000 surveys and with all the details on how to get on that would be higher attendant, and so we need to probably get this like on some newsletters that you might have, Lola. We need to get the word out a lot better if we were to have this again. But what do you guys think if we were to try to have another outreach? We do have the survey online. We don't need to send out the survey again. They can just fill it out. We had a number of people that did it just all online. What are your thoughts?
So Jill, did you reach out to the council office and ask them to send it to their email list? Because they may be able to narrow it to the same locations where you actually distributed the flyers. I understand District 1 is huge, so they may have that option and they could assist in getting the word out for your next community meeting.
Boy, that'd be fabulous to
Yeah.
get the support.
that would be it.
So
And
you
then
feel
we'll
like
look
we
at
do
time.
need a second meeting? Yeah.
I don't think it would hurt. I may have missed Esther's beginning where she said how many surveys have been returned so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have had a much, I don't know, we have around 50 that have been returned.
Okay.
And so we'd like to see obviously a whole lot more, but out of the surveys that were sent out, there was about 150 that the addresses weren't accurate for some reason. So they were all turned, they came back to us. But, and so I don't know if you want those addresses, Lola, if they would be helpful for you, if they were just vacant buildings, or I'm not sure. I think those addresses would still exist. I'm not sure why they didn't get them. But thank you, Cindy. You excellent questions, excellent feedback. We love you. Thank you. You're great. So, shoot, what happened?
Yeah, if you can get those to me, we can go through our GIS system and see what's going on with the addresses and resend those.
Okay, I'd be glad to save those addresses for you. And then if you think of any other ideas, Lola, of how we can get the word out again, we do have more of the door knockers or not door knockers, door hangers, and we could put those out one more time if you think that would be helpful. So we're with our limited time, we're doing best we can, but we do need to try to multiply our efforts with other groups joining us. But yeah.
Well, if
Well-
you want to do it right before your next meeting, which I know you said is October 20th, I'd have to look at the ambassador schedule, but maybe we could do it on a weekend and do the distribution when people are actually home so that which you did before, but my point is, and then the meeting would be the next week, something like that may work out better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Johnson, you as well, do you have any ideas that you can give us of outreach? I know you've done a lot of outreach in other communities.
We find that pictures help a lot. So maybe with the plan set that you have, the renderings that Dr. Walton presented, and I know some of the other members of your team are capable at creating renderings. I would really present those to maybe neighboring businesses and churches and ask them if they would like to write a letter of support. That goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
I see that James Tong from Public Works is also on. James, do you have any other ideas on how to kind of put together a CIP project submittal?
This is a great introduction, and also just listening to everyone is really, really helpful to me, because I was recently joined into, I used to be in facility, so I was part of the team with Lola when we did the Robinson Park Recreation Center back in 2016. What I learned from the past, working from different city, is it's always helped when we try to do the outreach to the large amount of the area, we tend to get the lower feedback. But if I like the concept of like doing the divide and conquer, where you specializes in the specific location and you focus on the smaller group, and then from smaller group they reach out to the the folks that they know, and you go from the smaller group to the bigger group. You tend to get more and better feedbacks through that. So that's been my experience in the past. And there's a couple of things I like to bring it up. I like what Cindy brought it up, looking at the smaller scope, smaller scale, which is more reasonable, more reachable goals. Is one of the things that we have been doing is using the CDBG funding. CDBG funding in the Northwest area, and we have the city yard. We have the city staff plus staff from MASH that have been working together to replace sidewalk. So sidewalk is definitely one of the things that we can look at on Fair Oaks. And I believe it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, city hired contractor, and also the city yard group using through the CDBG funding. They have done quite a large amount of sidewalk replacement, and also curb and gutter replacement, which help with the with any sort of nuisance or any sort of issue with the flow line, which cause vector issues and whatnot. And resurfacing, that's another great project, because resurfacing, when you do the street resurfacing, when the street looks nicer with the nice striping, you tend to attract more people. So
we
those
would
are
love resurfacing and something that's more like sound deadening pavement.
Right, correct.
So that it's not so loud. It's so hard to even walk on Fair Oaks. It's so loud.
Right, right. So those, looking into the smaller projects and just do it small segment at a time. So you show the people that you are doing something. And when you show the people you are doing something, and at the same time you are doing outreach, you attract more people, because they know that we are working toward from a smaller goal to a bigger goal. So so it takes a lot of small steps, but small step will eventually become a bigger step to a major steps. So
it's a unique community. You can hardly even call it a real community compared to other neighborhoods. That it's been so depressed and so much displacement that it's very hard to mobilize. Many of the churches are now commuter churches. People don't even live in the neighborhood and haven't for years because of the cost. So it's not like a typical community. And so I think that's where we're going to need an extra measure of support from other groups. I mean, we're working our best we can with all the churches, but many of the pastors don't even live in the neighborhood, or even close, don't even live in Pasadena because of the cost of housing. And so we're dealing with trying to have people come back, and appreciate their community, but they're not back yet, And so how do you reach out to people that might want to come back? And we do have what's called a local preference policy, where 30% or 20% of those that have been displaced can be considered to be qualified, if they're income qualified, to come back to live in some of those affordable units. So we've made baby steps that way. One of the really big steps that's going to make a huge difference for this community is the overlay zone. So if we can get that passed, we can then make it possible for the churches to provide the housing, and then people will really notice. They will really notice. So anything you can do to push the rezone, that area is zoned exorbitantly low compared to even the southern part of North Fair Oaks. It's 16 units per acre. And the one church that wants to build housing, actually two now want to do that, but the New Life Holiness is farthest down the line. And thank you, Mario, thank you. That is zone commercial. It's not even zone residential. So we need to do some significant zone changing so we can make those steps so people wake up and they see that change really is possible. So we want to thank everyone for coming today and your excellent comments and excellent insight and knowledge. Johnson, we so appreciate you, and Lola, you hung in there with us all these years. We so appreciate you. And James, it's nice to meet you and your good input for us.
Nice meeting you too. Nice meeting everyone.
Work
Thank
with
you.
you with that community development block grant money that we can allocate.
That's right.
here, you know.
Exactly.
So yeah, so maybe you can come to our next meeting so we can get to know you a little bit and
Sure,
learn
definitely.
projects
No,
you
looking
put
forward
up.
to it because I
for sure.
live close by Pasadena. So this is, I mean, I want to invest my time and I want to invest the effort, you know, especially with the community that I live so close to.
Well, we'd
So
love to
it's,
have you.
yes,
If
this
if
is
we
great.
don't have your email, could you make sure it gets in chat?
I believe when I sign up, I
Oh, you
provided in
okay?
my,
So you
but I
registered.
can,
Great. I know
I
some
can send
people
it.
came through live stream.
Right. Right.
So or through other means, YouTube. Well, you guys, God bless you all, and thank you
God
so
bless
much.
you.
And I
Thank
think
you
our
very
team
much.
is going to stay on just for a few more minutes and have a brief debrief. So
Have
we
a
want to
great
thank you
weekend.
so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Welcome.
much.
Thank you.